Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and you're listening to episode 98. In this episode, we have Marco Foglia joining us. Marco is one of our creature instructors here at iAnimate and has been in the VFX industry for, I think, 2 decades. It was a really neat opportunity to talk with Marco in regards to his career path, how he got into VFX, his time in VFX, and now working in video games as well. So check it out. Well, let's get into it. First off, I always really just appreciate you guys taking time to join us in this podcast. As you kind of mentioned beforehand, it's been a little bit trying to get us together. So I know with schedules and life and everything else, it's always a treat. So thank you so much for joining us in this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. And it's been too long. You've been one of our instructors for quite a bit in our creatures classes. And so, yeah, it's about time. So I appreciate it again. So I love hearing how people get into this field, throughout this is going to be probably our 98th podcast. So we're coming up on our 100th podcast. Yeah. And it's always neat to hear how people have kind of come in. Just curious, how did you get into animation?
I feel like it's also what I might have put in my iAnimate kind of bio, but I was a teenager. I think I was a young teenager, and I saw Jurassic Park. And I'm not the only one that's probably gone down this path, but at the time I was really loving video games.
Okay.
And I did really cheap. There was a thing called, it was an Autodesk product, but it was like for old computers, like before, I can't even remember right now, but I'm talking about like 1995.
Okay.
And it was called Autodesk Animator. And it's just like you could draw frames and it had very limited stuff.
Interesting.
So I saw this movie, and then there was just some snippet somewhere about how it was made. I'm like, I want to do that. I thought it combined like video games and animation. Like I thought it was the coolest thing ever. That was literally it. And so again, this is like mid 90s, and there was nothing in Montreal. I come from Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Okay.
There was no industry there. There was no real knowledge. The internet wasn't really a thing that was big yet. So I had no idea how to do it.
Uh-huh.
So I was in high school, and I asked my guidance counselor, and they had no idea how to do it. So they sent me down the completely wrong path.
Gotcha.
They told me I needed physics and chemistry. I swear. There was no knowledge, right? And so I knew what I wanted to do. Like I was sure of it. So I started studying because I hated math. And I got the marks I needed so I could kind of get into the next step. For us is a thing called CEGEP, which is like college.
Okay.
So I could go into pure and applied sciences, and I didn't know if I was going to go into programming or where that would lead. I had no idea. And I went into it and I hated it. I just don't like math. Math is great.
For certain people, right?
Right, exactly. And I found this, once I was there, I'd also at the same time, I had this old Nintendo Power magazine.
Okay.
That I used to get.
Awesome.
And they talked about a school in Vancouver that I'm not sure if it's around anymore, but it's called DigiPen, and it was just for game development.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
I don't know if it's around anymore, but it was back then, right? So I was in CEGEP and I wasn't liking what I was doing. I hated it, and I couldn't move to Vancouver. And then I just, I was asking around, and I asked anybody I could, and I went to all these little social clubs and stuff. And I found out about a school not too far from where I was that was like a trade school. That's where this is my big
kind of
sideways journey to get into animation.
Okay.
It was called a trade school. They gave you an 8-month intensive where they taught you just the software.
And what software is that at the time?
At the time, it was Maya was just coming out when I started school, so it's called Power Animator from a company called Alias Wavefront.
Yeah.
Which they got bought over by Autodesk.
Right.
And it was Softimage because that was a Montreal company, 3.9, 3.7, I think it was called. That was it. And so that's what they had at the school. And they didn't do much. They didn't teach you animation. They just taught you the software. But I didn't care. Like I lived there for those 8 months. And I made some good friends. They're still my friends today.
That's so cool.
Like 20 plus years later.
That's amazing.
Because we lived together there, right? We were there all night. We were there all day. That was it. And then after that kind of 8-month thing, I basically had a high school diploma and this kind of crappy, to be honest, education. And I started trying to get jobs. The only company at the time was Ubisoft here.
Okay.
They're still the biggest company in Montreal. They've grown tremendously.
Right.
But at the time, there wasn't many. There's like a few hundred employees. Now I think they have like 4,000.
So crazy. That's so crazy.
But that was the only place I knew about too. So I applied. I got an interview. I failed the interview terribly. I should say I was like a 19-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid at the time, and I had not been exposed to anything. I lived out in the streets. Like I would play in the parks, and I wasn't very like savvy. I wasn't very technologically anything. I had a completely different kind of life up until animation. So I failed my Ubisoft interview. That didn't go well.
Uh-huh.
And they said, "Oh no, your work's not strong enough. Just kind of work on it and come back in 6-7 months." And that was it. I was still living with my parents. I stayed home and I worked like crazy. And just over that it was about a year I stayed home and I just kind of worked on my demo. I just did tests and there was only 3 movies you could watch at the time. It was like Toy Story and like Bug's Life.
Uh-huh.
So I just watched those and tried to understand things that I had no education on, no access to books. Like I was in a bit of a bubble there. But that was it. I worked hard.
That's awesome. Now, that wasn't too difficult to get both a computer and software at the time?
So I had inherited a computer from my brother,
okay,
who was 9 years older than me.
Gotcha.
So I was able to get a very crappy version of Softimage, and I was able to kind of get that on the computer.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's how it worked. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's what I figured at that time.
Yeah. It wasn't easy, but you could still, there was bulletin boards, there was FTP sites that you could find out about. I started getting savvy really quick that year. Like I started getting access to the internet and figuring out how to find stuff.
Gotcha.
3ds Max as well. That was the first thing I really started working on the most.
Okay.
Because I figured out how to model in there and do everything. School hadn't taught me too much.
Yeah, because now Alias Wavefront and Softimage, I know that was really more just animation, right?
They had Softimage was definitely more animation. Alias had everything. But it felt like Max was a better package at the time. It was probably the leader back in those days. Maya had just come out in 1999 while I was still in school. Our instructor was showing it to us, but at school we were on these old things called SGIs. They were like supposed to be high-end computers that I assume now can't even run a phone. But at the time, I figured they were like amazing.
That's one of the things that I've kind of been able to reflect on, and I'm sure you're probably pretty close to my age. How much?
Yeah, I'm 43.
Okay. I'm just a bit older than you. 45. That's sad when you have to think about it.
You look great. Good job.
Well, thank you.
All this white here.
But how much we've seen in a short amount of time. You know what I'm saying?
It's changed.
So a lot has changed. So we've got a lot of, the early internet to FTP sites to BitTorrents and things like that just kind of, early. That's why I asked about the computers. I know at that time, my wife had got one. This is probably about 2001-ish. And ended up selling it for like nothing. And she's all mad because she's like, I paid thousands of dollars for that. I'm like, I know, hun, but right now, by that time, it was,
it's useless.
Yeah. So and it wasn't that great of a computer, it was just enough that because she wasn't looking for anything that was special, so things like that. We've come from now things that a lot works on your phone,
honestly, you can do it from a laptop. But back in the day, yeah. And I was lucky. My brother he's now a network admin or sysadmin, whatever, right? He's an IT guy. But at the time he bought a computer. He was like ahead of the game, I think. So that's why I had one. It wasn't great. I don't remember how slow it would have been. I honestly don't remember anything. I just remember loving every second of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've been at home for another year or so, just plugging along here. What did you do from that after that year?
So over that year, it's cool to just be remembering all this stuff.
Nice. That's why I love this here.
Like a long time.
Nice.
Over that year, what happened was the industry started growing because Ubisoft had made their presence in 1998. I think they started, and I don't know what was happening, but just a bunch of little small companies started popping up, and so I applied to Ubisoft again, but they weren't kind of calling me back. And I was hearing about some friends from school had gone out into the world too. And the first one had found a job and another one had found a job. And they started we all kept in touch a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I found out about a small place that was doing a cartoon show. And that was it. I applied there. And then they took me with my new demo.
Gotcha. What was it, by the way?
The show? It was the first thing I ever worked on was a German TV show for kids.
Okay.
You could find it on the internet.
It's not the one with the cats, right?
No, it's called Junior Wraparound.
Okay.
Do you know what Rayman is? from Ubisoft.
Yeah.
It's like a character with the floating hands. It was like basically a ripoff of that design.
Gotcha.
And it was these little short kind of vignettes, these little like short little jokes that would air. They were called ETV in Germany, and they were like a Disney channel.
Okay.
And in between their TV shows, they had these little kind of clips.
Nice.
Of these characters having little whatever moments or whatever. And that was it. And we had like a German translators, and we were just a bunch of kids. We had no idea what we were doing. But I didn't care. It was like the first job, and I loved it.
That's awesome.
A great director that's still around nowadays. He just taught us everything. That was the first big jump I had in animation.
Very nice. Now, was that back in Montreal or still in Vancouver?
Oh, no, sorry, all Montreal. My whole career has mostly been in Montreal. I didn't mean to confuse that.
The school was just in Vancouver then?
No, the school was in Montreal.
That was in there too. Okay, the Vancouver was the one you couldn't do.
Yeah, like I had all these options and I know what to do.
Gotcha.
And then luckily I heard about the one here.
Gotcha.
I won't say the name of the school in Montreal because it's still around and it's not great.
Okay, so gotcha. Can't say something nice, won't say anything at all. Yeah.
I prefer that way, yeah. That was it, yeah.
Very nice.
Job, and then it just, I don't know, the industry just was growing. It grew really quickly from like 2000 to 2005. There were like 5 companies, and then all of a sudden there was 500, not 500, but like 100 companies for sure.
Now, why do you think, just out of curiosity, Montreal has been known for its, its growth? It would seem like, and maybe this is where you can kind of correct me, a large part of it has been in regards to the government kind of coming in and helping with subsidies and things of that nature. Was that happening early on as well?
Yeah, Ubisoft had gotten subsidies immediately. That's why they opened there.
Gotcha. Okay, so as early as 2000-ish.
Yeah, or 98, 99.
Gotcha.
Somebody with foresight in the government's like, oh, let's just pay these people to come here. And they were right. Like their plan with Ubisoft was to there was a whole neighborhood that was a little bit kind of dilapidated. It had been kind of like, and it boomed because of Ubisoft. So that their plan was correct. Whoever wanted that it brought a whole neighborhood back to life and business and everything.
Yeah.
And I guess that caught on. So they were giving more and more subsidies. And it was a lot of local companies. Ubisoft was a foreign one. They were from like Europe. But a lot of local companies opened up and some of them qualified for subsidies. And I think that's mostly what the boom was.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know it was that early. Yeah, it was kind of funny back in 2000, I want to say maybe 16, 17. No, maybe it's, somewhere around there. I went and visited Jason Ryan there in Montreal and Cinecite and stuff. And we're just walking around and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's Rodeo FX, and so it's just all these studios that are just kind of hanging out right there.
Most of my career was in that neighborhood. It's old Montreal. Cinecite's a little bit off and Rodeo NPC's there. Frame Store's a little bit further out. That's closer to Ubisoft. But most of my career was in old Montreal. My first job was there.
That's funny.
From there. Yeah.
Very cool.
They just kept opening and the truth of our industry is it's pretty volatile. Like it's not easy to make a successful business. So a lot of them opened and closed and opened and closed. Like I looked back at my resume and I think there's only 3 companies that are still operating that I worked for. And I've worked for like 30 by now, maybe.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of contract work, especially the first 10 years of my career.
Gotcha.
6 months and then they lay you off. 3 months and then they lay you off. So it's kind of the nature of the work at the time.
Okay, let me ask you this then. With that type of schedule, so to speak, what were some of the things that you were learning and growing in as an animator?
I feel looking back, the amount of variety of people that I worked with, I feel is what helped me a lot because I saw different ways of working.
Gotcha.
Different ways of thinking. So somebody came from a 2D background and they had all sorts of insight into how to improve my animation. Some person came from mostly 3D, or one other person came from games at another job. I worked at a lot of different things, commercials, games.
Gotcha.
Literally, I did everything by now, I think. And I found that was, so from a technical standpoint, also different ways to work, pipelines, different ideas to have in your head, and then artistically too, just like different people that had different exposure to things. And I absorbed as much as I could.
Gotcha.
Time, It was a big benefit I found.
Nice. Yeah, I think I shared this on my last podcast. I'm working on a show right now. Really, really fun. But quota is pretty quick, Yeah. And but one of the things I'm actually enjoying about that is it's making me have to be very conscious in my decision making up front to try to be very specific because there's things that you learn in that, and so that's why I asked that question here, because I know, as you said, there's a variety of things that you can learn as that schedule is what it is.
And that's the thing too. I should say, speaking directly of TV shows, I feel TV series, even today, with the quotas are pretty still high. We were doing 25 seconds a week.
Gotcha.
And that's still an average. It's not like it's dropped much. Some shows I recently, with my current employer, we did a show that was like a minute a week, minute and a half, like last year. So, and I feel like you learn how to tell a story very efficiently.
Right.
They might not be the best ideas, but they're solid, they're clear. And I almost suggest like the first show you should ever try to work on is some kind of cartoon show or fast-paced show. It really
does help you on that.
Yeah, for clarity anyway.
Yeah.
One of those many checklists we try to check off as we work.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I had another question in my head. Okay, so how early did you get into things like VFX? I noticed a lot of your stuff, obviously, as I mentioned, that you've been teaching in our Creature. Okay, so mostly VFX type stuff.
Yeah, in Montreal, we're known as a video game company, a video game city. There's a lot of big studios here, quote unquote, but there's a lot of VFX studios too, especially small ones. It was probably my third. I did TV shows, animated shows for the first few years. There was a studio here, which is a notorious studio now, was called Meteor Studios.
Okay.
And there's a guy called VFX. The guy, his name is Dave Rand. I don't know him personally, but he's an advocate for unionizing animators and stuff like this. He was there after my time, but he was there because that studio closed down and didn't pay a lot of people.
Gotcha.
I was spared that because I just got laid off at Christmas the year before.
Okay.
They dumped a bunch of us before that, right? But so that was the first place I started working on a bigger VFX shows. I'd done some smaller VFX with like a very small company here. But that was the first one where I started doing, it was Discovery shows like a Dinosaur Planet and those things back in the day that were around. We did, what was those shows? There was a movie called Final Destination.
Okay.
I did a little bit of that. I did one of those. There was like a roller coaster sequence we did.
Nice.
An old Scooby-Doo movie. We did effects on that. Like, I don't have any of that stuff on my demo.
I was to say, because as we look at your stuff on iAnimate, you've worked on Transformers 3, Rango.
That was later.
Which
Rango,
is awesome.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Iron Man 2, Pan, The Last Airbender. So yeah, you've worked on a lot of cool stuff. I think on your reel, Riddick's on there.
Riddick
a lot
of here. Yeah.
What's that?
Riddick was here as well.
Gotcha. So when did you start getting into some of these kind of movies like Transformers and Rango?
Oh, that was about 8-9 years in.
Okay.
I was working remotely for Bungie with a friend of mine.
Okay.
He had gotten some contract from Bungie to do cinematics for one of their games.
Gotcha.
And then he went, I don't think he's never been an instructor here. His name is Emil, but he went to ILM and then they needed people. And they would have never hired the group of people he suggested. I was one of them. They would have never hired us because we had no high-end film experience. We weren't in California. We were like Canadians. But he suggested us, and they took a chance on us, or our demos were good enough at the time, I think. And that was it. Like I just got in through word of like I got an interview because of that. I got really lucky, to be honest.
Nice.
And then I went to ILM, and that was my dream job. That was the reason I had started everything. I kind of been sidetracked, but then when I got the job there, I didn't think I would ever leave. I did for life reasons, but the place was amazing. Like I loved it there.
Gotcha. So you moved out to California at that time?
To San Francisco, yeah.
Gotcha.
Actually, another Montrealer and I, we ended up being roommates there too, just to kind of get it all worked out. We went for a first contract for Transformers, and then took a little break, 2 months in the summer, and then we went back for another 1.5 years for those other projects.
Gotcha.
And I would have totally stayed, but at the time I was at a crossroads between my now wife. We were dating and she couldn't move with me and I didn't know what to do. So I chose life over work.
That's long-term more beneficial for sure.
I did not regret it.
Yeah.
I would have loved to still keep working there, but I didn't regret it now.
That's exactly right. Yeah. On your deathbed, you will not be
Exactly.
No, that's great. As soon as you said life reasons, that's what I figured.
Yeah. And it came back to Montreal. And by then VFX was booming up here. MPC had opened, Framestore was opening up. I ended up going to MPC after that.
Okay.
Well, there's a small company first where I worked on Riddick.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to MPC and I stayed there for about 5 years, I think 4 years. That's where I did the rest of those kind of things on my.
Gotcha. Now, on your demo reel with Riddick, it was a lot of that dog work.
Yeah, I did mostly the puppy.
Amazing work.
Cool.
What has drawn you towards creature type stuff?
So I don't know, because I like human animation a lot, but I'm not as experienced. I have 22 years experience now, and I do not feel confident with performance like other people, because I'm not in it. I'm not in it every day. And there's a lot of things to think about that I just don't have at the top of my head. But creatures, just from the earliest bits of VFX I did, it was always spiders and monsters and slimy stuff. And I started to really like the amount of detail that you could put into VFX stuff, and it wasn't asked for in more cartoony stuff.
Gotcha.
And then it just so happened that most of the work I got was creature stuff. It was quadrupeds or just weird monsters and stuff. But it was that detail. It was like nailing that timing and the little, I don't know what it was about it, but
that made it believable. That made it feel like that was like, this is legit here, huh?
Like I feel it's more the realism that attracted me more than the quadrupeds themselves or the creatures. Gotcha. It just happens to be mostly creature work.
Yeah. Gotcha. Now, is that because a lot of it also is up there in Canada in regards to either video games or VFX?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, you said you worked on a lot of the VFX type stuff, and so up there in Montreal, it seems like, and I know, like I mentioned earlier, Cinesight, and there's other companies up there that do.
There's a good amount now.
Yeah, L'Atelier, things like that do more performance in regards to film type deal. But there's a lot of VFX up there or video games. Yeah. So is that why you've kind of as well gravitated towards a lot of work that way?
As well, yeah. And I just never made the move. I would always have a choice, I suppose. I didn't have a choice for a long time, right? You just got the job you could. But when I started having a choice, I could have moved to a cartoon, more feature place or VFX, but I just kept staying in VFX. I never considered if I was even going to be accepted at a feature place, because they didn't have a demo for it, right?
Gotcha.
A lot of my stuff was action or monsters or things screaming at the camera. I'm like, that's pretty much all I've done. And so, yeah, but...
Any favorite projects as you kind of look at this? I know I heard you say something about Rango. Was that one of your favorites as you look at your kind of career here?
Yeah, Rango was probably my first. It was 9 years into my career.
Okay,
it was probably like the best thing I'd ever. I loved the team. I loved the vibe, everything about working in that movie, and especially I was working at my dream job.
Gotcha.
So everything for me was amazing on Rango, but really the team at that place, most of them are probably still there. They're just excellent people. They were just really welcoming and really helpful.
Gotcha.
And the director was Gordon Verbinski, and he knew what he wanted. And it was just like so enlightening on so many levels for me. My supervisor, I loved everything about Rango. And the project was super cool, but I didn't appreciate that as much at the time.
Gotcha.
I was so star-studded with everything else, you know?
It does seem, though, that I think earlier on in people's careers, it's the idea of working on a particular show. But the more I've talked with people and the more I've kind of worked in it, it's definitely, that's a neat plus. But it, obviously, as you kind of mentioned here, it's the people you work with.
Like 1,000% for me so far. Those have been my most memorable kind of projects. We did another one at NPC. I supervised a show, a movie that nobody saw called Monster Calls. It's just a beautiful book, and it's a beautiful little story, but it makes you cry.
Gotcha.
It's about a kid whose mother's dying, and like a monster comes to visit him to kind of get him through it. It's like an imaginary monster. What is it? You never know. But that was another experience that everybody had fun on the project. Everybody just loved the emotion behind it.
Gotcha.
It was just great. It was great. Great director. Great everything.
Nice.
I've had maybe two. That was the two major projects in my career that I really, really loved.
Gotcha.
And I've just enjoyed everything else. I haven't hated anything.
Gotcha.
I haven't had. Oh well, I take it back. I had some experiences I hated later in my career, but not many.
Gotcha. Now, what about Transformers?
Oh yeah.
Okay, as I say, that would seem like a fun one too. I growing up of the '80s, loving Transformers.
And I love Transformers.
Yeah. So is that a pretty cool project you have been working on?
But I'm not I'm a video game nerd. I'm not a property or film nerd. My friends are. So I didn't it was all, it's cool, man.
Gotcha.
I nerd out on, or I love the work. So what I loved most about Transformers was not the property, not that I was working on this cool movie. I love that there were scenes I could do where I could animate all these little bits on them.
Okay.
And all these little knobs and little joints and all the articulation. I could figure all that out. That's what I tripped on.
Gotcha.
The mechanics of the movement and stuff. I very much love that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I could do machines all day. I think I've never had that opportunity. But and people would think that's boring, but I would really have fun just doing mechanical stuff all day.
That's cool. Now,
yeah.
Okay, who did I have on? Was it Matthew DeMuro? I think
He's a friend of mine.
Okay,
from my first job.
Very cool. Okay,
yeah.
That's awesome. I had him on a podcast. I think it was shortly after Lego Movie, and but I knew he worked on this. So you worked with him on Transformers?
He worked on the third and fourth one.
Okay.
I worked on 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Oh, I worked on 2 and 3. Sorry.
Gotcha. So now one of the things that he didn't tell us was maybe because it was close to the fourth one, is he didn't give away too much in regards to how the rigs worked. He said there was some I forget exactly what he said, but it was kind of like, there's some secrets in there, you know. You don't want to give too much away. I think, like I said, because the fourth one was coming out. But it sounds like there was a lot that you still got to work with on the rig, as you're mentioning here. Got to tinker a lot of the little stuff there.
Oh yeah, they had I guess I'm allowed to talk about this.
Yeah. Like I said, this was right around the fourth one being released, so it's a while ago.
The rigs were a little heavy, so that's one thing I will say. There's places that had better tech at the time and still do, like as in lighter rigs and fun, easier to work with. But they had this awesome system where they would model them very logically, so you could literally pose them and almost get to the car or whatever vehicle they had to be. And there was like a tech side that would then finish up that. I never had to do a complex transformation, but that's how that worked.
Okay.
But all the pieces on them, you had a tool that you could break them off and give them any pivots you want. And you could break them into little pieces if you felt it was cooler. And that kind of freedom was bonkers. But under the hood, people do not appreciate it because there's a lot of lighting and shadows. But they had everything modeled under there. There were pipes and
unreal. They
really did. Like, there was so much detail in those characters, and you could literally just break off any piece and move them if you wanted to, if it called for it. Yeah.
Sorry, you said something there that I wanted to touch upon. So now, what was the first project that so Rango was the first project you worked on over at ILM?
No, the first project I worked on was Transformers 2.
Okay.
It was a short contract. We got called in at the end to help them finish it up. They were a little behind.
Okay.
And then I went back. I was supposed to be on Rango right away for the whole year and a half, but then they needed me on Iron Man 2 instead. So I worked on that for a few months. And I got credit for that film, but all my shots got cut.
Okay.
There was this whole battle scene in the middle where they were fighting. Iron Man was fighting his friend Road, like in the silver suit, and they cut that really short. So all the stuff I did was gone.
Gotcha.
All that stayed in the movie that nobody touched but me was this like 4-frame shot or 6-frame shot of him like flying through a window. I'd done the takeoff, I'd done the flying part, but they cut all that out.
Gotcha. But you get credit for it.
I got credit for it.
Yeah, you worked on Iron Man too.
It was a few months. It was a lot of iteration. It was a lot of fun. And then I did Airbender, and then I did Rango. Rango was the last thing I did.
Okay.
And I was supposed to return for another Transformers, I think it was, but I said no.
Gotcha. Yeah. You'd worked on the Transformers. You'd got cool movie Rango under your belt.
I ended up, because there was a few ILM animators in Montreal for Transformers 3 or 4. I worked on another one after, but outside of ILM.
Gotcha.
They had farmed work out to us. And I worked from here, like from home.
Now, one of the things
at a studio, but yeah.
One of the things I'm love hearing that you're kind of talking about too, maybe you can kind of elaborate on there, is a lot of it seems like the networking, because with your projects jumping on and off and things of that nature. How does that work for you?
Something I never excelled at was like schmoozing people.
Okay,
but like it just happened naturally. Like we were a small. It's grown now, but it was a small community in Montreal, especially in the like 99, 2000, 2003, 4. You saw the same people at every job. You all got laid off, and 60% of you found the job in the next studio together. And that's why you kind of form friendships with a good, like, I don't know how many we were. We're about 24 people, I think.
Gotcha.
I work for one of them now, like Dave Hubert too, who runs Agora. Like I've known him for many, many years. So yeah, like it was mostly that. It was just a circumstance, and I would say luck.
Gotcha.
Because I'm very terrible to be in person. Nobody likes me, but that's not true. They all love me.
I know. I can tell from the podcast. This has been pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was it. It was just that kind of, we just happened to be there, happened to be working together, all became kind of friends, and that was it. And then you cross paths again, or you see each other again, or somebody hears about a job, and you still have to apply. Like I've never had a job without an interview.
Gotcha.
But even now, I probably would never even feel comfortable doing that. Like, I want to make sure I'm the right fit. I want to make sure, I everything. So
Gotcha. Yeah. One of
but
the
it's mostly
parts.
that, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of cool too, because you said now working with David Hubert,
Yeah.
my brother has worked on a project with Superseed with Jason Schum. But what was kind of cool was that one of our former graduates who came after my brother was Martin Smith, who became his lead on that project. So it was just kind of neat to see how working together and sometimes underneath, and it's just that's how how it kind of works. And so no egos and
no egos for sure. That was the thing about this group of people. There was no competition really. We were all helping each other, trying to get better and sharing honest criticism. Like it really helped.
right.
It tempered me too, because I've worked with people that were very difficult and very hard to work with. Like they were, nowadays, I guess we'd call them toxic.
Okay.
But there wasn't the word back then, right? And so, it taught me a lot about how to just take criticism openly and honestly. And helped me out a lot. That really helped me out a lot.
How does that, because I mentioned before that you're teaching here at iAnimate, how has that helped you in regards to how you teach?
You mean
just
open criticism?
Yeah, the ability to communicate that kind of stuff, to be able to, receive feedback, to be able to give feedback, things like that.
I think it just made that part of it easy. Like I'm not shy to, and I try to treat, especially when we do the quad courses, I treat it like we're a team and this is a prod. And so if I had to supervise it, this is what I would call. I wouldn't sugarcoat it. I wouldn't, this is just a matter of fact what we need to do. So it helped me in that respect. Like I was just already very fluent and used to just speaking my mind and having my people's minds spoken to me.
Gotcha.
And accepting and just like not taking it personally. That's super important. And I feel like I try to do that with the students too, or everybody in the workshop. I try to we're in this together, and I'm not necessarily better than you. I know I might have more experience and ideas than you, but for me, the value of a supervisor is perspective. You have perspective. You're not in there, the weeds. I didn't see it for 2 days, and now I see it. I could call everything pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
That's the biggest value, especially when you get to more senior people. If you're brand new and you need a lot of help, you need more kind of not hand holding. I don't want to say it in a bad way, but you need more help. You need more kind of instruction. But so that was it. Just this open dialogue with my friends just helped me.
One of the things I love about that too, though, and I don't know if it was intentional or just the organicness of how we started iAnimate. It's really kind of helped students like that to be prepped for the studios.
Yeah.
When you run it like that, I
agree with that.
So the way I'm hearing you, it just seems like that's just how we've run it from the get-go, but it's that very same thing right there. They're able to start learning how to receive criticism, give input. Hey, what were you thinking on this shot here? Well, I was thinking, okay, great. Now let's kind of work with this here. And it's very much a studio type atmosphere.
It is. And most studios, I would say, there are those few people that don't really know how to communicate with humans, but most people they know how to. It's not a mean thing. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not trying to hurt your work. I think this could be a little stronger. I think this could be a little different. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like opening that dialogue up is definitely part of the creative process. I think it's good for everybody.
Very cool. Now you've been teaching here at iAnimate for
5 years.
Okay, 5 years. Has it always been in the same workshop? Creature workshop? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What have you noticed in those 5 years, maybe difference in regards to students coming in, their work? Is there anything that you've noticed?
It used to be, actually, I feel like on average, the skill has grown.
Okay.
Regardless of, because there's always been a mix of kind of more experienced people and more junior inexperienced people taking the workshop. But overall, I found like some of the results coming out of some of these people, like I'm like, I don't even deserve any of it. Like you guys are amazing. Like, why do you, like I feel like I'm not doing enough for you. Like I have to, because your skill is already really great. Like and I think that's what I've seen overall. I'm not sure if it's because there's more resources out there or there's more opportunity, whatever it is that's allowing people to just practice more or work on it more. But the general skill level of everybody has just gone up over the last 5 years. Gotcha.
Now, have you noticed that as well, though, the need for that because of the skill set in what we're expecting in VFX and even television VFX, because that's grown? Are you noticing that level that's happened to be at that as well?
Possibly, yeah. But some of the people that have great skill work in like a previous company, or they don't even do VFX. They do just cartoon in-game animation that's purely cartoony. I don't know what it is. I feel it's probably just more, I hope it's more opportunity. People are just able to work Yeah, because if you look at, if I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I see somebody that's got 5 years experience and they way surpassed where I was at 5 years.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
by the time they get to 20, they're going to just blow me out of the water. So I have to give them bad notes and keep them down. That's my strategy.
Yeah.
So I don't know where it comes from, but I figured it's that more opportunity, more kind of freely available material that helps supplement that stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. But I was just wondering also if just the need for that, which is why we have our workshops, because there's also a higher level of need in regards to VFX and things of that nature as well. So I'm glad we got guys like you who are teaching this. So yeah.
I appreciate that. But there's definitely like I can only speak to Montreal, but the kids get thrown. I call them kids, but they're not. They're in their 20s, right?
Yeah.
They get thrown into the deep end in a lot of VFX companies now. There's just a lot of demand, you have to really be performing very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't find that fair. I find that kind of just a terrible position to put somebody in.
Gotcha.
Because some people will tread water and some people will sink. And I just don't feel like it's fair for either of them, right? So yeah, you're right. There's more demand. There's more need to be able to be proficient right away.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What have you in your time in VFX? I did remember my question, by the way, but this is not it. What have you enjoyed in your time in VFX in these years in the industry, as well as what have you seen that you wish could change?
So I've animated and supervised on both. As an animator, I just love like I said, the quality. I call it quality, but the detail and the amount of stuff that you can try to hit. You used to have more budget, more time to do stuff compared to other stuff. Nowadays, I think it's pretty fast paced anyway. But I love the higher quality, quote unquote, that I could hit. And as a supervisor, I just loved, it's the same thing, just solving the problems for the filmmakers.
Okay.
That's what I consider it.
Yeah.
You just fill in the gaps of what they hadn't thought about, and you try to just give them what they're asking for, but they don't realize how many problems you have to solve to get there.
Yeah. I love it.
That's fun. You know what I mean? What I don't like is the exact flip side of exactly what I just said, which is that sometimes I feel like the onus should be on them to be a little bit more prepared. I'm going to say this. I'll say it. I'm talking about movie makers, filmmakers.
Right.
They should be a little bit more prepared on their end, a little bit more of a thought out idea of what they hope for. And then within that, there should be discovery. But what happens often is we don't have time. I kind of want this. I need to get this. You need to get this done now. Why doesn't it look good? There's not enough of you need to bring a bit more to it.
Direction in regards to the vision.
Maybe pre-planning. And I've seen it grow and I've seen it improve and I see the trend. I feel like the business is so hard right now. I know mostly VFX, so I can't speak to the other
right
kind of stuff, but the business is so tough right now that I see them trying to prepare better and have more kind of anim research done before they even send stuff out, or have some artist that's a key artist in-house doing some stuff, whatever, the trends have been. So I see it going in a positive direction, but
nice.
I feel a lot of the issues have been creatively. A director comes from live action. They don't really know animation. And so they have a general idea, and then they're used to just filming something on the day, and the best you get, that's what you get, right? But with this, because it's so iterative, they just want you to discover that for them. There's enough people, at least in my career, that were like that.
I get you.
And I find it's not just that it's inefficient; it's just painful.
Yeah,
for people.
No, that's fantastic. I love that. It is inefficient, but it's also painful for the artist.
It's painful, and if you do a little bit more, then we could all have fun and enjoy this, and it'd be even better.
Yeah.
But instead, you're starting from your knees are already cut off, and you don't really ever. I find that's one of the things that was disappointing on some projects for me.
But that would also seem to kind of go back to, again, why things can be over budget, why you could not be able to spend as much time in these things because the planning wasn't quite done up front, and you're reiterating.
So,
yeah.
Or there's a thing called post-viz, which is where they will film a lot of the footage and then they'll put the CG character in there. That's an attempt to figure out the staging and everything before you ever send it to a VFX studio. That was the first thing that started getting popular like 10 years ago, or whenever Avatar came out. That was the first one that basically post-viz or pre-viz the whole movie.
Gotcha.
But even those were just, because it's been a learning process, I think, for studios and filmmakers, that has not been an efficient thing either.
Okay.
It's been they'll like they'll make a previs and then they won't film the plates remotely. The plates are, I'm not sure who's watching this, but plates are the live action footage, right?
Yeah. No, I appreciate the explanation because some people are coming from,
but just in case,
appreciate that.
So they'll make a previs and like, this is what the cameras should look like and this is what the characters should be doing, but then they'll go off and film something that doesn't look anything like it. So there's that gap you have to then rediscover. And it got better. Like all these things have gotten better in the last 10 years, but through the course of this, there's been those things. Or they'll do a post-viz, which is I filmed everything and now I'm going to pay a company to very quickly put a character in there, but I didn't respect spatial problems or anything. So I know what I like and I know what I want, but you can't really do any of this if you want to light it and render it and put fur on it. So you still got to figure out a bunch of nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And I'm calling it nonsense, not because I feel like it's, I like, there's a two types of iteration for me. There's this, which is you didn't plan it super well and we have to overcome a lot of practical issues just to get you something cool. Or there's everything is really cool and we could just make it awesome.
Right.
And I'd love that second half where you're trying to make it better. We always used to say, if I'm doing overtime, it's to make it better. It should be just to finish it. Yeah. And I had too many projects where it was just to finish it.
Gotcha.
You weren't really hitting, you felt like you were missing something or it could have been better.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, no, and to kind of bring it back to animation specifically, because again, we've got our audience here. That's such a great point in regards to when one approaches their animation to plan well.
100%. I've gotten so much better as an animator since I started doing that.
What are some of the resources or methodologies that you incorporate to plan for your shots?
So nowadays, I'm much more meticulous than I used to be.
Okay.
But I will spend as much time as I can, and I'll even do like on my own hours sometimes if I'm really invested in a shot or something that I really want to do. I want to find the best possible reference I can. I don't need everything to be exactly what I want, but I get close enough and I cut clips together from even, so I'm thinking about animals now, I'm thinking about quads, but just anything I would do, I think I would probably approach it the same way. I'll cut different animals together. I don't care. But as long as I'm getting kind of the motion I think I would need.
Nice.
And that's why from a performance perspective, that's totally different. But for me, for creatures, mostly that's what I do. It's that, like, I try to get as much good ref. I try to edit it. I try to even make a little reel if I have the time in my shot, so I know exactly where I want to put it, translate the little plate around. Like I'll do a bunch of stuff. Like I'll go crazy.
Gotcha.
To me, I find the execution part just goes so much smoother the more I took the time to figure that all out. The second half, besides just gathering ref, is really thinking. That's the part I do mostly on my own time. Like really thinking about the shot, like the context it's in, what are like brainstorm ideas for myself that I would want to talk to my director or whoever it is I'm talking to, whoever I'm reporting to.
Yeah.
Like the ideas I think are what not enough people focus on. The idea of the shot or what could be fun in the shot. Like what's the actual, okay, so you have a dog running around a corner and it slips. But, if you can't think of it, you get inspired. You find a bunch of different dogs slipping. Which one seems the most entertaining or the most interesting way for it to slip? That's what I mean by the ideas. Like, before you find the ref, you try to spend time. And for me, it's usually a hybrid. Like it's a bit of both. I'll find ref and that'll make me think about something else. And then I'll change my idea and I'll find better ref or I'll get inspired by something. But it's those two things though, the ideas and then lots of ref planning. I'm big on ref. Like I'm huge on ref.
I think it's just important to kind of reiterate that in our podcast interview here, because I think for students, a big hurdle is just, I want to jump into my shot, and forget about that planning up front. I think, and maybe even sometimes experienced animators can kind of forget that what's helped them along the way then once they've kind of got that. I've noticed for me and the show I've been working on here is I've been shooting a little bit more reference than normal. Again, just to use it for part and parcel what you're talking about, to get that idea, okay, this is what should be happening here, and just get my main poses in here and then lose it here and start animating. But it's helped me as a kind of a big overall guide of what I want to hit.
And people shouldn't lose. Like I bit myself in the butt even 2 years ago. I had a commercial pitch that we wanted to do and I didn't film ref. And then I was like 2 days away from the deadline. I'm like, it's just not working. I don't know what I did. I don't know why I screwed this up. I just got some ref and I knocked it out in a day.
Give you some clarity, huh?
But people should know about me though. I suck at filming ref. I don't understand my body. I know how to move a mouse and a pen, and I know how to look at a screen. So I very much get ref from people that can help me. Like I ask friends or ask other animators or whatever.
Nice.
But luckily, that's why I do creatures mostly, probably too, because I can just find ref.
There you go.
Ref. My friends have laughed at me for how bad my ref is. Like, yeah, there's some classic.
That you never want to see the light of day, or haven't seen the light of day, right? Yeah.
Thankfully, it's all under NDA or on some network somewhere, so it's good.
So, do you just hit YouTube then for Animal Ref, or is there any other places? I know Rhino House. We've had some.
Rhino House has been a huge one for me.
Okay.
Recently, though, there's like so many more though too. There's Shutterstock. There's Storyblocks.
Okay.
YouTube is a big one too, but there's kind of those like where you buy the footage. I forgot, like Storyblocks and Getty Images. But they have a lot of ref that you can just kind of capture or download crappy versions of it. But it's good enough.
Yeah.
Like low res versions.
Gotcha.
Those are the main ones. People underestimate how much stuff exists on DVD.
Okay.
So if you can I have a great. So unfortunately, somebody ripped it for me, but I bought a great book on dogs. It's called Dogs in Motion, and they have some of the stuff I use in my course is all this X-ray footage.
Nice.
That comes out of a book, like the DVD that came with a book.
Oh, very cool.
Right? Like you don't just find everything on the internet as much. It's a lot of it's there nowadays, but
right.
Yeah, don't forget books are still a thing.
Some hidden gems, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, is it come on Kindle or is that
actual physical?
That's right.
I don't have it here.
No, that's great. Okay, so my question I did forget here is you mentioned beforehand that you're a big video game.
Mm.
Okay, so why have you not worked as much in video games then?
Because recently, so after NPC in 2016, I had my son, and something that happens to people when they start getting older in the industry, I think, at least for me, is I started, not that I don't care about work as much as I care about life. I think I've always had a balance. But I felt like the thing about VFX that people have to know is it's very demanding. It's not the same as other industries. Like you start a project, you say you have 6 months, you're already 4 months late. Okay. Like that's just going to be your life. You know what I mean? At least that's how it's been up until the last that I was in it.
Which is what we're hoping that you're talking about earlier. They're getting better at planning, right? So
I tried video games a few times. I had little contracts in games, and I did not like in-game animation. I found it restrictive. By the way, I'm not like that now, but this is how my career was, right?
Gotcha.
Like, I hate this. I hate that it doesn't look the same way, and I just do this little snippet, and it's got a blend, and it looks like crap. I call it, and I tried cinematics, and I'm like, these are just like what I'm doing now, but they just don't look as good. Like this is what was my mentality. But then after at PC, I said I need to change. Like I can't do 80 hours a week like this. And that's not even crazy compared to people that work at Weta that do 120 or whatever. Yeah. But for me, this was enough, right? So I went to here in Montreal. There's a studio called Eidos Montreal, which is a great studio. And I worked on a Tomb Raider game that came out. It was the last one they made. Okay.
Is that the one you worked on with Dave?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
David has been a big part of my life the last few years.
Gotcha.
That's also ironically why I heard about iAnimate.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, I knew about it, but why I heard that there was an opportunity there.
Right.
So that was it. So I did Tomb Raider, and in that process, I started realizing how much cool stuff there was that I didn't realize. And so then I stayed at Eidos. They asked me to be an anim director, and I worked on 2 projects that never got greenlit. So I spent a year developing it, canned it, spent a year developing it, canned it, and then I was like, okay, I need to change it again. But it started this bug though, and I think there was been this whole world in front of me that I ignored for way too long. I ignored for like 15 years of my career. Like I now think I love VFX still.
Right.
But I'm heavily into, and where I work now, we're for a studio called Agora. There's a lot of variety. I do everything now.
Very cool.
I just finished working on Fortnite. I just finished a bunch of stuff, right?
Nice.
But I love gaming now. Like I love the idea of game development a lot. Like we're making a little one on the side with a couple of friends now. And I don't even care about the animation part as much, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I care about the actual game design and the development of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
But even the animation stuff is just super cool. The people that pull off good game animation, I feel, are more impressive to me than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Because it's so tough. And you're so constrained in fighting something. Not fighting it, but
limited to a degree
Fair enough. Yeah, that's
to
the
be
right
able
way
to
to
pull
say
it
it.
off in such a great way with limitations. Yeah, I get you.
It's not the same. We do films and VFX, and we just whatever we create gets on the screen.
Yeah.
But they have to get there in such a hard way that it's now I find it pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
it's really cool, to be honest.
That's neat. No, that's one of the fun parts that, like I mentioned, this project I'm working on, the quota is pretty high.
I'm shaking a lot, sorry.
No, it's okay. And that's, to be honest with you, that's one of been the most impressive things that I've appreciated with the artists I'm working on is how they're still getting out such great animation. And so yeah, to your point, you're like, it's amazing. Because I know what the quota was, and you're still, it's this,
And there's an artistry to it too. Game animation is different because it needs to be responsive, but it needs to be clear. So they focus on completely different things than I was taught. Antic is not a thing that you can put in half of your animations.
Gotcha.
You have to, when I click the button, that guy needs to do what I want you to do. So you find other ways to sell the animation with the way it resolves, as opposed to giving it time to read and then finish. Now you can only work on the ending because it has to, you know what I mean? Like all this kind of stuff. And then there's just the crazy amount of animations you have to create. Just have a person walking around. I'm walking, but I'm tilting. I'm walking, but I'm turning 20 degrees, 40 degrees. Depends on the system. Yeah, they do a lot of just crazy magic, I guess. That's what
gotcha. That's fantastic. One of the things I do want to, I love, I did see that you're working for Agora. Dave Hubert has been a part of our program for a long time. But I think there's also something in that, excuse me, and just you being an instructor. One of the things I think has made iAnimate unique is our instructors have been, for lack of a better term, handpicked to work with us. It hasn't just been, hey, we open it up and if anybody's throwing their stuff, there's been a lot of the, for lack of a better term, personalness that have come in from our instructors. People have known them, they've worked with them. There's that level of familiarity and trust. And so that's been one of the things I think has been unique in regards to iAnimate is, you look at other programs, they've got great instructors, but there's a unit, I guess, within our instructors that have come. So so I think that's been really neat when you mentioned that with Dave.
To speak to your point too, I just want to say, like, I watched a bunch of courses from other people.
Oh, awesome.
Because like I said, performance is not my thing, right? So you guys have so much, and the instructors are great, like awesome. Like it's really, so you just never tool to learn. That's for sure.
Okay. But I love that too.
But like I've loved it, and I'm going to check out other stuff too. Like I'd like to get into Blender, and I know iAnimate's offering that now.
Which we have a course on that with Mark Masters, I believe. So it's
some cool stuff. Like, I'm going to keep learning until I die, probably.
I love that.
That's my goal.
And that's one of the things, honestly. Okay, so kind of a funny thing. You mentioned kids, right? And they're in their 20s. We're in our 40s. But one of the things I do love about our industry is the ability to do it for a long time. Yeah. But also, as you're talking about here, just to continue to learn and grow. Yeah. It definitely never gets boring.
It doesn't. There's so much stuff. Like I feel like I never reached my peak as an animator. And then I started supervising, and I felt like that was a reset. You're starting from, it's a totally different skill set. Well, not totally different, but there's a lot of different skills. So I started from scratch again. I had to build my way up. And now I've been supervising for, I guess, 7 years.
Wow.
So I feel more comfortable now than I did 7 years ago.
Right.
But I still never reached my peak artistically as an animator, and I definitely haven't reached my peak as a soup. So I have no idea where it's going to go. But you just keep learning, and you learn from everybody. We all say this, but it's true.
It is. Yeah. There are things that seem there are things that sound like cliche, but they're said over and over again because they're true.
100%. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you enjoy outside of animation? Obviously, you've mentioned your family.
Besides games, which I'm still an avid gamer. I'm not shy. I don't care.
Any favorite games right now you're playing?
Oh, God of War. It's okay. It's okay. It's good. It's good. Good to have really worked on it. God of War is the game I'm playing now, but outside of mostly family stuff, like I'm out of shape, but we still like to get outside a lot. Like I love winter activities more than summer. Okay. So I love skiing and tobogganing and a bunch of nonsense. Awesome. I haven't skated in 10 years, but I'm gonna start doing that again. It's kind of like I had a very good youth as far as activity. And then I unfortunately was one of those people that went all into sitting in a chair all day in front of a screen. So now with my son, he's almost 6 now. So I've been starting to wake up a little bit and starting to get back into kind of my roots, I would call it.
That's awesome, man. No, that's
so
great.
That's kind of more what's happening to me now.
Very cool.
Get a little more active, luckily. But because I swear, like I could sit here, I sit on my computer sometimes all day, or I have traditionally, you know what I mean?
Right.
8 in the morning, 8 at night. I've been there the whole day almost.
Yeah. No, taking care of your body. I think it's also just for your mind too. I love that ability, and I feel like when I come and sit back down, I feel like, okay, I've done something.
Refreshed.
Right.
Yeah. I try my best to, once I do stop working for the day, with the exception of the odd video game, I try to stop screens. I try to stop a lot of stuff every day.
Nice.
I disconnect. I turn my phone off. Like I completely disconnect from my world. That's helped me a lot mentally. It's just the physical part I have to work on now.
Gotcha.
To get back into shape.
Yeah. I'm sure your little guy will help you. Help you with that. Yeah.
A lot of energy.
Because it is getting cold there in Montreal, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, there's snow outside.
Oh, wow. Okay. So skiing is a big one. I haven't done that in years.
I suck at all of it.
Okay. But you get out and do it. So, hey.
Yeah, we did it a little bit. We're gonna do more this because there's already some fake snow up north. So we're gonna go out a little bit. Yeah. Nice.
How's the pricing on that? Is it pretty affordable in Montreal?
Yeah, skiing. Yeah, for a day is like well, I can't remember off the top of my head, but last year was what was it, $70, $100 or something like that? I can't remember what it was. I don't know if that's expensive or not, but that's what it is here.
Gotcha.
But you have to rent. I'm talking about renting equipment.
Renting everything all day. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
That's awesome.
If he gets into it, we'll do it more.
There you go. Well, Marco, I really appreciate your time. I don't want to take too much more. I really appreciate the podcast. It's been great to be able to finally get a hold of you and talk with you.
Yeah.
Like I said, well overdue, but I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for all you do for iAnimate. And again, appreciate your time.
For iAnimate being a thing. Just thanks for having me, and it's been great.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, with that, we are out.